Hello, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. We will be continuing fixing D20 Modern. Certainly, there's plenty to do when it's coming to the different advanced classes. And the next two advanced classes I have in mind to discuss are the Infiltrator and the Investigator, both of which are not particularly great. They're fairly bottom rung. They're not as bad as, say, the Archaic Weapon Master was, or definitely not the Techie, but they still are not, they're not even good at what they're supposed to be doing. But that'll be for next week, one of those two. For now, there was a subject that had come up that I kind of felt inspired to talk about again. I've done one video on it previously. It was something shared by the guys over at Epic Loot, their page. Well, I have liked their Facebook page. I talk with them on wouldn't say a super regular basis, but I frequent their page and share stories and the like, and it's just generally a good time. They really do seem like an excellent bunch of dudes. So I'll put a link to their page in the description below here. So go check them out. They sell dice, they have miniatures, they do a lot of hand painted stuff. I mean, it's really cool stuff. So really recommend you guys go over there and check it out if you find time to. Or, well, if you don't, certainly up to you. I'm not being sponsored in any way or something or anything like that. I just wanted to give them a shout out. But the subject in particular it was a post that had been shared in a previous group, and it was essentially the idea was that a natural 20 is not always a guarantee of success. And I actually agree with that. I believe that 100% for most situations. When it comes to combat rolls and the like, if you roll a natural 20, you have succeeded. You've gotten a critical hit. And the reason for that is well, take a look at real life. There are so many different historical accounts of different duels, combat situations where somebody horribly, inextricably, totally unskilled has gone up against a deadly opponent and, if not won by sheer luck, at least took their opponent down with them. So, and the reason for that is mortal creatures, I mean, no matter how expert we are, there's always that chance. We have that moment where we're not fast enough. We lose our footing somehow. Something happens. Even just the goddamn glimmer of the sun just happens to get in your eyes, reflects off of somebody's blade at the right moment. You wince, you blink as you're mid stroke, and yeah, you're left open and you get impaled, you get run through, and you end up bleeding out and die. It happens. And so for combat rolls, yeah, critical hit, absolutely. You got a lucky hit in. This is an opponent you would otherwise be entirely unable to scratch, but for save for that moment where you just seized upon that decisive opening, maybe even by accident. I mean, certainly professionals are predictable and reliable. The world is full of dangerous amateurs. At least Murphy's Laws of Combat would say so. But there are plenty of other situations, though, where a natural 20 does not guarantee success. What a natural 20 will do, however, in my mind, and I'm sure in the mind of many more DMs out there, a natural 20 is the most favorable interpretation, the most of any kind of result that you could get, as particularly on a seemingly impossible or stupid task. And the example given was you go up to the king and you say, "Hey, king, let me go ahead and take over this kingdom for you." If you roll a natural 20, that doesn't mean you've succeeded and now you're the new monarch. That means the king has recognized it as a massive joke, has gotten a good deep belly laugh out of the whole thing, and they're not about to throw you in jail for treason or have you executed or anything like that. You have lucked out in the best way possible. You nailed the charisma check. A lot of other people, you would have talked them into a lot of different things, but that is ludicrous, absurd, and stupid. Not going to happen. It's not an automatic success. And some players would try to argue that. Some even whine and try to go, "No, I rolled a 20. That means it happened. It succeeded, like I said." So, no. The DM is the arbiter. They interpret the die results and they measure that against the ridiculousness of the situation. And talking somebody, especially a monarch, a king, an emperor, lord, whatever, talking them out of their position of power is going to be insanely difficult. In fact, my response on this particular topic that was shared by Epic Loot was I'm inclined to agree, no. But if a player was going to do this, they need to sell me on it. They need to not only have a successful role, but they need to start busting out the best combination of words, trying to attempt to sway somebody over and get them to relinquish. And it would require several checks, not just the one, and they'd need to roll really damn high. I wouldn't even be opposed to multiple critical successes being necessary for it. And it would need to be something like, Your Majesty, I see you. You seem so worn and tired. I mean, yes, you're the king, but heavy lies the crown. Aren't you tired of it all? The plotting, the intrigue, having to keep up with everything, the various factions of nobles that are nitpicking with one another, the various alliances and webs of intrigue. It's all got to be so much. Why not relinquish? Step down to somebody you know to be capable with the words and an incredible diplomat and a good statesman. Let me take over. You retire to your villa. And even that would be a stretch and would require a lot of successful checks. But, if they succeeded, that would come with its own host of problems, and I very much believe in punishing players with exactly what they ask for. But we can cover that another time. Point being, a natural 20 is not a guarantee of success. It is a guarantee, however, of the most favorable result for you. Say this were a skill check. Say you have an incredibly heavy load that you're carrying, you're wearing full armor, and you've fallen off the ship into the drink. You're looking at, God, an almost impossible swim check, but you nail a 20. Well, what does that mean for a swim check? Well, I would make the argument that instead of, managing to keep afloat, as part of your swim check, you actually managed to drop your load and not drown. Sure, you've lost all that gear and it's now sinking its way down to the bottom, but you are not, and you are able to keep afloat as a result. That's the most favorable interpretation of that there. Some players might argue against it. I've seen a post from Tumblr where the description was a dwarf fell from a snowy cliffside, and the player rolls a strength check to try to flap their arms hard enough to start flying, and he rolls a 20, and the DM says, "Yep, physics break," and the dwarf is now, instead of plummeting to his death, he is now beginning to rise by the sheer effort he's putting into flapping his arms. Hilarious imagery, but no. No, 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 no. Not at all. The strength check, I would say, was just him just managing to get those fingertips, despite the gauntleted fist, just gets that last little bit of a grip on a ledge just a little ways below the rest of the party, close enough to where if they work together, they can save him. And the strength check, I would say, yep, okay, I will let you go for one round, however many, and you can try to get a better hold and try to maybe climb your way back up. But no, you're not going to goddamn well fly. Hell no. Yes, it's fantasy. Yes, it's fiction. And yes, the image is funny. But no. No, no, no. Absolutely not. I can't describe the incredulity I feel as a DM. But that said, you know, rolling a natural 20 is still an amazing thing, an amazing feeling. It's great to have that critical success happen. I mean, but it is not the be all, the end all. It is not automatic success that lets the players achieve all their wildest dreams. And you don't need to go with that. Just give them the most favorable interpretation of what happens with the situation at hand. If they're making an impossible charisma check and they roll a 20, well, they're not going to fail and have the worst thing possible happen to them, but neither are they going to succeed. At best, they are getting to walk away with their lives intact, with their limbs intact, with their gear still on hand. Maybe only a minimal parting of gold or even silvers, but they are not going to always succeed. You can tell them no. I mean, if you need to, call it a house rule. Establish it ahead of time. Head this off. Let them know that, hey, a 20 does not mean you automatically succeed at every last thing you try. Depending on what the situation is, it can still be a failure. But a caveat I would add to that, it could still be a failure, but it could be a failure that makes another attempt slightly easier. Say they're trying to climb a smooth surface, not just a vertical, perfectly smooth surface, but a surface that, as they try to climb, slowly begins to curve out over them. And as they climb, this gets more and more difficult. Sure, they've got their pythons, they've got their hammers to drive them into the walls, but at some point, the check is just going to be impossible. It's going to be difficult to do without, impossible to do without magic. So they try to get set, they're hammering away, and what happens is they slip, they fall, but their gear, although it pulls away, it manages to create cracks in the wall. It gives them other handholds that they can make use of. It cracks and fractures in such a way that, yeah, they can slip their fingers in there, get a hold, and then maybe finally reach around towards that last lip, even though their handhold is here. The edge of whatever it is they're trying to grab hold of is just right over here. So they just get their fingers in there, make that climb check, and the DC, the difficulty for that climb check, is lowered because they rolled that 20. It was still a failure, but that they didn't plummet to their deaths, and it created a handhold where they had a much better chance of succeeding. Still difficult, but much more possible. I hope I conveyed that accurately enough, or clearly enough. It's not always easy interpreting what's in the brain, conveying it into words, and then making sure those words make sense. Ah, but those are just my thoughts regarding rolls on the D20 for critical successes. Certainly, other games have some slightly different rules, like, for example, Shadowrun over here. Eh, Trying to aim without looking all that well. Shadowrun here, the critical success system is more dependent on, well, you're rolling a number of d6s depending on what your stat is, on top of what your skill is, versus any other modifiers, whether penalties or bonuses that you might be getting. If you roll all sixes, no failures, no ones, none of that. If you roll all successes, no failures, it's a critical success. And it's definitely, in that instance, it's more in line to be a success. But it's a slightly different system though, and some slightly different rules. And I'll be honest, I've run a couple of games, but it's 5th edition Shadowrun, definitely a bit overly complex, very overly complex in several areas. The rules for swimming and explosions are just too much, and so I'm not 100% familiar, but there is some leeway depending on what the system is. Or Rollmaster is another good example. One of them's just a little bit more familiar with, having gotten to play it for about a year and a half-ish, 2 years now. And when you roll in that, if you get 95 to 100 on a D100 roll, which is the system Rollmaster uses, well, it's called open ending. You get to roll again, and whatever you roll on that die, you add to your previous die roll. Then you add in your skill bonus, your whatever your stat modifiers are, you get that sum total together there. And it's possible to open end multiple times, because if you keep rolling 95 to 100, well, you keep rolling until you stop. I've hit a roll of over 900 before in front of people. It was an incredible roll. But again, depending on the system, there there are ways for you to definitely achieve the most impossible of successes. For D20 rules, though, I would say on certain what this depending on what the situation is, a, a critical success, a D20, a natural 20, is not an automatic success. It's just the most successful result possible given the situation at hand. But those are just my thoughts. Certainly, they're not the only thoughts. If you are DMs out there or players, go down into the comments and let me know what you think down below. If you like it, well, hit the like button and tell me why. Or just go, hey, yeah, thumbs up, dude. If you hated it or dislike it or disagree with me, well, go ahead, hit dislike, and again, go into the comments. Let me know. Let me know what your counter arguments are. Certainly, I'm more than happy to engage in discussion, and really, no one way of running things is always going to be 100% correct all the time. Might not even be correct 50% of the time. But, as long as you're all having fun and the party's having fun, then so be it. And if you did enjoy today's video, well, I've got a few more that are going to be popping up over this way. Some are going to be what the almighty algorithm believes you'll enjoy. Others are just things I've kicked out here recently. And hell, if this hasn't been your first stop here at the Gamer's Den, well then go on down there, hit the subscribe button. You must be enjoying something, and you may as well become a regular member and get notified when I upload more content to this channel. But for now, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.